Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to NCOIL One-on-One. With us here today is North Dakota Senator Shawn Vedaa, member of the NCOIL Executive Committee. Senator Vedaa, thanks so much for taking the time.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate being able to do this.
So let's hop right in. I'd like to start off by asking how you first got involved in public service.
Well, I grew up as a young boy in the grocery industry, and I had an uncle that was the assistant manager of my dad's store, and he was a big customer service person, and I guess my dad was too, but it was take care of the customer, and you just start having that attitude, and you start talking to people, and you realizing that you kind of had a knack with people, and so you end up maybe being a little interested in being on the city council, and so yeah, so I did that, and a lot of volunteer groups before that too, that served on some boards there too. So
That's interesting. So you mentioned growing up in the grocery industry. I know we also have Senator Jerry Klein who's involved in NCOIL. So two grocery store owners in the North Dakota Senate Insurance Committee. That's pretty interesting.
yeah, great story with Jerry Klein. It'll be a quick one here, but when he got elected, I actually interviewed to manage his store.
Oh, really?
First time I ever met Jerry, I knew who he was, but my wife and I went there, and my wife always laughs. She says, "Well, I think he found out we had 5 kids, and he says, I don't know if I want, I want to have the responsibility of having that employee under me." So it never did pan out, but anyway, it's all good. So
Seems like it worked out in the long run.
it did, yes.
So what issues have you been most involved in during your time in legislature?
Well, I was started out in education and government veteran affairs. And my second session, I was appointed to vice chair of industry, business, and labor, and my chairman was Jerry Klein, as a matter of fact. And so in industry, business, and labor in North Dakota, we hear all of the insurance regulations, all the business regulations, the boards that exist out there, and so that's kind of where I got my start there. So.
North Dakota is definitely a very unique state. So you got a beautiful background from North Dakota behind you. Are there any issues that you worked on that you think are unique to North Dakota that maybe other people in other legislatures aren't as focused on?
Well, this last session and the session before, we started tackling our defined benefit program for the PERS, the North Dakota Public Employees retirement system, and we saw that the North Dakota PERS defined benefit was going to be very costly to the state. So we worked on legislation to make it so we shored up that that benefit, and so our employees that are on it will never have to worry about not receiving their benefit at the end. But then all new employees coming in will be part of the defined contribution program.
Nice. It's great. So outside of the legislature, your public service extends beyond that. You served in the Army National Guard. First of all, thank you for your service. Can you tell us what kind of motivated you to serve in that capacity?
Yeah, I think just a sense of duty. I grew up with an uncle that fought a great uncle that fought in Normandy. My dad was in the National Guard. A lot of my peers growing up, I knew were in the military, and at the time, I was a young married man with one child, and I wanted to get to college, and that was a way for me to be able to pay off that college and also serve at the same time. So, best decision of my life. It opened my eyes up to a whole new world, and to this day, I'm a huge supporter to anybody that talks about wanting to serve in the military. I think it's probably one of the best things a young man or a woman could do.
That's great. And so on top of all of that, you also now own your own grocery store. How do you think that perspective as a business owner impacts the other parts of your life, like going to the legislature and working on those kind of issues?
Well, I may not have updated my profile, but I sold my store.
Really? When did you sell
Yes.
that?
I sold that in 2020. So,
Wow.
I probably haven't, maybe everybody just kind of thought I still was in there, but one of the reasons I sold it is because of legislature. I mean, both of them were kind of, you know, how you can't really serve two masters, and I wasn't doing a good job with either one of them, and excuse me, I was doing a good job with both of them, just not a great job, and I don't want to be just so I ended up selling it to an employee of mine, and she's doing very well in it, and I am basically focusing on legislation, that being a legislator. So
That's great to hear. So your professional experience wasn't necessarily being directly in the insurance industry. So how did you first come to work on insurance related issues when you went to the legislature?
well, back when I went in the National Guard and I decided to go to college, I did an internship with Northwestern Mutual. Yeah, so they have a great internship program to this day, and so I did that. I kind of got involved in the insurance industry. I sat down and I did my test, and I just graduated from school, 5 years prior to that, and I thought, man, I'm good at this, and I struggled during school. And this is something that I enjoyed, and I went through that testing process, and I understood the insurance industry, so I kind of, stuck with that for a little while, moved on and out of there because I had a family, and the commission structure was kind of tough for me, and the guards was tough to make it work all together. So, but then uh, about 10 years after that, I heard a conversation that Aflac was hiring. So I got involved with Aflac, got my wife into Aflac. That was 25 years ago, and she's still to this day with Aflac. So are two of my daughters, and my son is licensed with Aflac as well. My two daughters are district sales coordinators up here in North Dakota. And then after in that timing, I did about a 3-year property and casualty stint with Nodak Mutual here in North Dakota, a company out in North Dakota. So
So it looks
yeah,
like the insurance just runs in the blood through the family, right?
it is right now. That's for sure. Yeah.
So moving on, how did you first hear about NCOIL and how long you've been involved with the organization?
Well, I was vice chair of IBL. I mentioned that before, and I think it was a 1920 biennium. North Dakota meets every other year. So the 1921 biennium, I was appointed by the majority leader to be on NCOIL. So my first NCOIL meeting was quite a surprise to me. I hadn't really been involved, and but well, there again, insurance, I get it. It's one of those things that has always intrigued me and interested me, and it just kind of came to be part of my wheelhouse, I guess.
That's great. We're definitely happy you're involved. And so how would you describe your overall experience with the organization?
I would have to say that it's been awesome. There's, you know, I always tell my family, I said, whenever you can sit down with people that are as intelligent or more intelligent than you, and learn, and that's what I get when I go to NCOIL, and I'm learning, and I hope some people get an opportunity to learn from me as well. But a great organization with I mean, it's going to sharpen those tools that you got out there with the insurance industry already, and it's been awesome for me.
Yeah, that's for sure. Are there any issues you want to see NCOIL take on in 2023?
I'm the president of the RAND Corporation. I shouldn't call it corporation. It's the RAND, and so that's a Reassurance Association of North Dakota. So our insurance commissioner came up with legislation. I believe it was a 1921 biennium. It started out with an idea that, can we lower insurance premiums by having a reinsurance pool that our insurance companies in the state, health insurance companies, can go to in the event that self-insured, because this is for self-insured, people, not for our groups yet. Although I think the groups might be in something in the future. So we brought that into North Dakota. It passed. I mean, it was very, very bipartisan, went through great. And what it does is those insurance companies can reach into that pool when they go over $1 million. And it has lowered our premiums in the state for those self-insured for about 20%. So I think if that's something that NCOIL could look at, and it's been interesting, and there's other states looking at it. I mean, our insurance commissioner is very active in the in his association as well. So it's something that I would like to see, that everybody be able to take advantage of, if we can look, especially if we have success like North Dakota's had.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely have to get that on the agenda for one of our upcoming meetings. That's for sure. Speaking of attending NCOIL meetings, do you see any benefits for new legislators trying to get involved, and maybe any words of encouragement you could offer with your experience?
Well, as a new legislator that's coming into NCOIL, I mean, like I said, you're working with people as smart or smarter than you, and you just be a sponge, and you're just able to pull that information in. And I would say, sometimes there's certain committees you belong to, attend all of them, get up there at the table. I was kind of hesitant when I first came in. I thought, well, I'm not on this certain committee. Well, I found out you just pull up a chair, you put your name tag in front of you, and you get involved, and that's where you really learn about what's going on in our country, and why we do this model legislation. So we're all it's probably one of the only industries out there right now that the federal government has left to the states, and I think it's important we keep it that way, and as state legislators, that's why it's important to get involved.
That's great. Yeah. So you mentioned the model laws. I know that you had sponsored, I think back in 2021, model that was the Fairness for Responsible Drivers Model Act that you decided to pull back from and not have it go through because it was a very contentious issue. I'm wondering if there is any experience you've had in North Dakota similar, where you've worked very heavily or sponsored a piece of legislation and then decided it was best to not put it up for a vote.
Well, the one thing about when you sponsor legislation in North Dakota, it's going to get a vote. So we don't, but there's been times where I wish some legislation I might have sponsored didn't get a vote. You sit down and you start hearing some talk back and forth, and you realize that, yeah, this probably wasn't that great of a bill. But in North Dakota, it gets a hearing and it gets a vote, and if it survives the chamber you're in, it moves on to the next chamber. But yeah, I mean, we've had some legislation here that that I've been involved in, and some bee legislation. I didn't think bees were that something to get excited about, but like anybody, they don't want their industry monkeyed with. They just I mean, a guy had a great idea. He says, can we leave these bees maybe about half a mile off the paved roads, because if you get swarmed or something, you run into them with a motorcycle, especially, you got a bad deal. And for insurance company would probably think, well, that's probably a good idea to move them off the highways too. But the bee companies came in and they changed their minds. So at the end of the day, I wish I probably just wouldn't have even brought it forward. But with everything, whether it's good or bad, it brings up questions, and at the end of the day, we usually learn something from it. So
that's interesting. So based on your service in North Dakota, have you seen partisanship having an impact on insurance related issues as much as you've seen on other issues and other legislative bodies, or is it more bipartisan?
I would say insurance wise, it's mostly bipartisan. Where we do get in the partisanship is that no pay, no play law we were talking about before, because it is. I mean, me as an insured responsible person, I'm thinking, hey, I want that coverage for myself when I go out there. If I hit an uninsured motorist, he shouldn't be able to benefit from him being not being insured, or and so stuff like that. But then you've got the side also of the individual that's going, well, wait a minute here, that person couldn't afford insurance, they needed to get to work, they had formula they had to buy, they had diapers they had to buy, so when you sit back and you look at their side, the bipartisanship kind of comes in the middle a little bit more, and you try to work together. So
Didn't see any of that partisanship on issues at NCOIL. I know we discussed the model that got retracted, but any other partisanship you see at NCOIL or things like that?
I would say NCOIL, I've seen little partisanship at all. I mean, I rarely know if I'm working with a Republican or Democrat. I mean, unless you really want to look into it. I mean, we come to the table and at the end of the day, we're leaving going, hey, you just it came up with an idea with with the majority leader in California, and he's a Democrat. I didn't realize that, but we came up with good model legislation, and I think that's what everybody's got to remember. This is about the consumer, the industry. At the end of the day, that we get that right. So
That's great. So naturally, you discussed some of the positive things about NCOIL, but of course, always things we want to improve on. As a member, what do you want to see improved on going forward?
There's this little muffin I like, and I wish they'd serve that. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's hard. It's a great organization. I mean, the people that I've worked with, your crew, I mean, it's like walking into a family reunion. I mean, these people are open arms. I mean, it's like going to Hawaii. They're basically putting your lanyard around your neck, and I mean, it's just a great organization. I mean, I like as often as we meet. I mean, I love the places we go, and a lot of people say, well, what do you need to go there for? Well, because a lot of people show up because this is a big deal. You can't just have this at the Motel 6 or the Super 8. You've got to have it at a place where you can get people in quickly. They can sit down for 3-4 days and they can get back to where they need to be. So you just can't have it at any place. You have to have it to where, and so we've got to go to those places that are set up for that. And NCOIL does a great job. So I can't come up with anything. I really did. I tried to find something that maybe irritated me, but I can't. So
that's great to hear. All right, so
Yeah.
we're nearing the end, but we have a quick lightning round of questions we want to ask you. Have our group get to know you a little bit better. These are the real hard-hitting questions if you're ready.
Yeah. Let me take a deep breath here. We'll drink of water.
Can you tell us what your favorite all-time movie is?
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Great answer. Favorite book?
Favorite book's the Bible.
Nice. Favorite all-time food?
Nachos.
There you go.
Always eat nachos.
Favorite all-time song or musical artist?
I'm gonna go with the Rolling Stones.
Great answer. Favorite all-time TV show?
If I was locked in a room for the rest of my life with one show to watch, it'd have to be Cheers.
Nice. And then the last one is 3 dinner party guests, living or dead.
Well, I've got my grandfather, Erling Vedaa, my grandfather, Harold Broughton, and I lost my uncle, the one I was talking about in the grocery store, Kevin Broughton. And if I could sit down with those 3 for dinner for an hour, and I'll get that opportunity someday, but here on Earth, those would be the 3 I'd pick. So
that's a fantastic answer. All right, so this wraps up this month's NCOIL one-on-one interview with North Dakota Senator Shawn Vedaa. Senator Vedaa, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I appreciate